Yep, I'm talking about Sunday again. Welcome back in, people. Quick intro to who I am, which will explain why I'm making this video. I used to study screenwriting, I now study philosophy. I also have OCD. I personally see a lot of philosophical influences behind Sunday's character, and in my opinion, it seems strongly implied that Sunday has OCD. This is not a premise you have to accept, but I hope to explain why I think a person with OCD could very much see their experience reflected in Sunday. First, I'll give a quick explanation of OCD, so if you know about OCD and want to skip that, the chapters are in the description. Anyways, I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist, or any professional in the area, so I can only tell you what I've learned from therapy, experience, and research of my own. I'll leave links to pages which can tell you more about OCD in the description. For this video, here's what you need to know. OCD involves recurring, unwanted, and persistent thoughts or urges that cause distress or excessive worry. The intrusive thoughts cause discomfort, if we're going to put it mildly, and the compulsions are meant to relieve that discomfort. But these compulsions end up playing into the obsession. OCD is also sometimes referred to as the doubting disorder because of how much doubt people who experience OCD have about themselves, their experiences, and others. For example, I'll be repeatedly checking every damn word in the script for this video beyond the point of simple diligence. This will be accompanied by doubting my words, for fear of misinforming people or upsetting someone. Anyhow, this has been an incredibly basic explanation, hopefully a sufficient one. Let's talk about how Sunday's OCD manifests. The explicit ways in which Hoyo shows this may seem like a very stereotypical portrayal of OCD. Interactables and character lines show that he wants everything from his surroundings and clothing to be just right. This line from Dr. Ratio about Sunday says it is an illness to be consumed by every little detail, when referring to how Sunday likes his outfits to be in order. This looks like OCD from a very stereotypical lens of people liking things to be organized. While this is a real way OCD can manifest, I know some people may be wary of seeing OCD portrayed in this way because of how this obsession with wanting things to be just right is often misunderstood as just a quirky personality trait. But there is a difference between personal preferences and OCD. This will become more clear when I discuss what we see from Sunday in the 2.7 quest. The part about this line which seems to show that this is more than just liking things to be a certain way is the fact that Sunday seems to be consumed by every detail, consumed being the word doing the heavy lifting here. This is a characteristic of obsessions. If we assume that the word consumed is not being used hyperbolically, this is potentially good evidence that Sunday was written to have OCD. Also, I'll talk about the significance of order later on and how his philosophy of order reflects how people with OCD aim for certainty. I also found a Reddit post, which I'll leave a link to in the description, which talks about a note that you can apparently find during part 2 of the Penacony quest. It reads that the Master of Delight Pavilion, presumably Sunday, used to suffer from severe compulsions. This note also takes a bit of a jab by sarcastically saying that he's clearly fine now based off the condition of Delight Pavilion. Again, this may be conflating personal preference with a pathology, downplaying the pain that OCD can cause. I personally wasn't too bothered by this, but I could see why someone might be. This plays into the stereotype of OCD and being me, but still obsessions with things being just right are real. Even more compelling, I think, is what Robin says about Sunday in the 2.7 quest. She says he will hesitate and agonize over the right course of action, which seems to point towards symptoms of rumination. OCD latches onto things of value and creates doubt about them, and while this line alone does not allow us to conclude anything, it would be consistent with Sunday's character for him to suffer from intrusive thoughts about how to act morally, knowing his motives to save others. Outside of these details, I'm hesitant to attribute any observable action of Sunday's to a compulsion, so I'll instead consider what we know about Sunday's inner world and how it is reflective of a person's experience with OCD. When writing characters with OCD, often the pain of the subjective experience is left behind, and this can diminish the experiences of people who suffer from it. Sunday's subjective is where I think the presence of OCD becomes more obvious, but perhaps I'm reading too far into this. Sunday is a character who likes certainty. Most of his fears seem to be centered around not being able to save people from suffering and letting down Robin. This portrayal shows his suffering from uncertainty, but it also shows the start of recovery, which is nice to see. In the 2.7 quest, we get to see this play out as he accepts his preference for order, yet learns to recognize that certainty is impossible. Here we see the distinction between liking things just right and having intrusive thoughts that things need to be just right. This parallels his acceptance that there will always be a paradise that needs to be built, and he cannot save everyone. He comes to accept that not only are there no gods which will save people unconditionally, whether or not he can end suffering is an uncertainty. Additionally, this can be seen when 1 Week claims that in the past, Sunday would not have tolerated any noise, yet now he is anticipating of possibilities in his plans and more accepting of the unknown. His low tolerance for doubt is consistent with the experience of OCD. A more subtle way in which this is shown is through Sunday's ideology. I have an entire video talking about Sunday's philosophy, so I won't go into it in too much detail, but here's what's pertinent to this video. His philosophy of order is very reminiscent of ancient Greek and Neoplatonic philosophies. These philosophies emphasize the power of human reason being capable of providing knowledge about the truth and reality. In some of these philosophies, reason and order became near synonymous. Through reason and contemplation, one can know reality or have certainty. Now, you may already have guessed how this is relevant. Through the lens of a person who has OCD, not only can this philosophy make the promise of living with certainty, but through taking reason to be an epistemological foundation, it provides an idea that individuals can reach this place of certainty themselves. And this I say coming from experience, it can be very easy to confuse rumination, which is a common OCD compulsion, for contemplation. Surely I'm not the only one who went through an ancient Greek philosophy phase to cope with fears of the unknown. The path of order, which parallels this philosophy, offers Sunday the option for control, or at least perceived control. So I find Sunday's initial ideology and following of Enna quite an accurate reflection of what people who struggle with OCD seek: certainty in a world where it is not possible. It seems as if Sunday's patterns of thought are consistent with those of someone with OCD. Ultimately, I'm not 100% sure Sunday was intended to be written as having OCD, but it does seem likely. And if not, I think Hoyo did a pretty decent job writing a character whose inner world can reflect what it's like to suffer from it. Anyways, that's all folks. If you made it this far, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to talk about this more, I stream on Twitch. And if you want to see more content like this, subscribe. And whatever you go on to do, do it well.